anyone who just exercises regularly on some level, the portion of the brain responsible for discipline, it's located just above the brainstem in the middle of the brain. I forget what it's called right now. It gets bigger. It can be like 2 or 3 times or more bigger compared to someone who doesn't train and doesn't exercise discipline. And this will carry over to other parts of your life.
Yeah.
Everybody, welcome to the Bacon, Bibles, and Barbells podcast. I'm Coach Justin and joined by Coach Emily. We actually changed our topic today because we wanted to do one with Amanda, but she got sick last minute, so hopefully she'll be better soon. So preview, we're going to be talking about instilling a love for fitness in your children. Mm-hmm. And so today we figured we'd just pick something else that wasn't as much pertaining, I think, especially to moms being present and things like that. So we don't have the coach moms around. So this one's going to be on muscle mass and why it matters. A lot of what we're doing at High Calling Fitness and everyone that's interested in fitness in general, I think, ultimately leads to the cultivation of muscle mass, some to greater and lesser degrees, but ultimately trying to skew our body composition to be more toward muscle mass and less toward fat mass, obviously within reasonable bounds. So now a lot in the sort of church reform community also, I've especially seen, I've just made a reel on it, a lot of pastors mocking bodybuilding even as a sport, and even just going to the gym and lifting weights in general or posting your progress and things like that. I want to talk about that for a minute and address the allegations of vanity first, and then talk through why it matters even biologically. So, by the way, pretty much every pastor I've seen say this is fat and out of shape. It's really hard for a pastor from the pulpit to be able to say, have self-control when you obviously haven't controlled yourself from a donut lately, or, whatever your particular favorite snacks may be. So there's a certain hypocrisy there anyway that undermines their authority. But beyond that, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is stewardship. Our bodies are the vessels that we occupy while we're here on earth. They'll eventually be glorified. And guess what? That glorified version, I don't think anyone's going to be fat. I don't think when God made Adam, he was fat, nor was Eve. And I don't think that in their perfect state, they overate, or, obviously they didn't have access to processed food and all the other stuff. But we're not victims of that.
Yeah.
And I think that, every time you see pictures, like artistic descriptions of Adam and Eve, they look pretty hot. Like they're fit, they're in good shape. We know this intuitively, that this is good, that this is the ideal human state. We know that, and looking that way doesn't make you vain. You can be vain about looking that way, and you can pursue looking a certain way for vanity, for sure. But things like posting online as you make progress and losing weight, gaining muscle, or celebrating hitting a PR in the gym. I've seen accusations that, like, I just saw a post about it from a pastor last week, I think, saying something about like guys bragging about their deadlift and stuff. And the thing is, like, I don't know who they're seeing. I'm sure they're seeing the same types of posts I'm seeing. It's people celebrating their wins, and we celebrate our wins on social media so that we can all sort of like celebrate together and be excited for something. I don't see posts online of people bragging, my 500-pound deadlift makes me better than you, or like, look at me, or anything like that. Like, I don't think I've ever really seen that. I'm sure it happens, but it's more like just a general celebration, just like if you have a baby, or if you have things go well in business, or if things go well in your life in general, you celebrate that. You might post about that and share with people, but not, it's not a look at me kind of thing. I think that they're, honestly, my accusation of those pastors is that they're projecting.
Yeah. They're triggered.
Yeah. I think that it's pricking their conscience because of their wanting to protect how they live. And also it's just sort of like distance themselves from feeling like they're obligated to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain degree of like their conscience being pricked. And I suspect perhaps even undercurrents of jealousy. And that's why they're accusing these guys of like bragging. So
yeah. And I sometimes, like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you see more of it than I do, but a lot of the time it is older pastors that I tend to see that
yeah,
from. And part of it, I think, is, like you said, we are sharing the human experience when we do that. Most of the time, it's not in the form of bragging.
Mm-mm.
But I think some of these older pastors also just don't understand social media and the way that our generation uses it. It's like, because we
Yeah.
do use it to share. And most of the time, people are posting things. It's either just thoughts or things they want people to see or want people to comment on. It's just
Yeah.
like the way that we use social media is so different from how they
Yeah.
used to share in their youth. And I
Yeah.
get that, and I have like an understanding for that, but at the same time it's just not the reality. And the sharing of the human experience is, I think it was C.S. Lewis in the Four Loves. He said something, I'm gonna butcher the quote, but the quote is something like, one of the greatest human experiences is to share. We just
Yeah.
get so much joy, whether that's from just people in our family or our friends or whatever, like from sharing those victories, those experiences that we're having. And that's the way God made it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And looking at people who are fit is pleasing to the eye. It's more pleasing to the eye than looking at people who are overweight, they're fat, or whatever, they're out of shape.
Yeah.
Because the eye is drawn to beauty. God has made humans to be in His image, and we, obviously, the primary thrust of that is that we're capable of having His righteousness. We're capable of exhibiting His characteristics, obviously in a very limited sense, but many of His characteristics. That's the primary thrust of that. However, in the emphasis, but at the same time, He probably reveals Himself. Not that anyone has seen God, but He's even described, as having the same appearance as us. He takes on the same form as us, and that is, I don't think that when God. I don't think that God in heaven looks fat. And so I think that to kind of go a little more into like even the bodybuilding stuff, I'm not a bodybuilder, but we have bodybuilders on the coaching team. In fact, half of us are bodybuilders, and have competed on stage. I've talked to a lot of bodybuilders. I've worked with bodybuilders. I've been to bodybuilding shows. I've seen bodybuilders. I've talked to coaches. There are a few people that are into it for sort of like vanity reasons or whatever. That's kind of on the fringes.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are doing it because of the mastery over your body that it requires. Bodybuilding is different from strength sports. Strength sports, it's more like using your body to exert greater force against resistance. In bodybuilding, think of that resistance not being an external force, but being yourself.
Yeah.
And it is a very high form of discipline. To get stage lean and be muscular is extremely difficult. It's and most people are doing so because they get the reward and pleasure of seeing their work manifested. It's not because they want to prance around stage in their underwear. In fact, if you talk to most bodybuilders, they find that part of it to be very uncomfortable and something they have to kind of get over as part of it. And they also, you talk to anybody that's in bodybuilding, they don't, as far as like the aesthetic of the look, they generally, and I wouldn't say for myself, wouldn't say that like on the stage is the way that they look the most aesthetic. They look aesthetic for bodybuilding and competitive purposes, but that's at extremes of demonstrating mastery over your conditioning and your diet and your training and everything else. It's not for this is the ideal human form. In fact, I think most bodybuilders probably look their best like 2 months before a competition because they're pretty darn lean, they're muscular, but they're not to that like freaky lean stage. And I think most people kind of in that world kind of feel that way too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not this thing of it's demonstrating that I have achieved a look that is per the standards of the class that I'm in, and demonstrated mastery over myself to do so. And then I've looking the most like that I should look, and sort of manifesting certainly an extreme degree of discipline in doing so. And discipline is the last thing that any of us should be putting down.
Yeah. And I think Coach Bill said this a couple months ago when we did an episode. He just said it so simply. He was like, aesthetics are pleasing to God. Having a good aesthetic is pleasing to God. And that doesn't even just apply to like our bodies, although it does. And so many people are just like unwilling to say those words. But it also applies to like how we keep our homes, and how that's why we like, manage our gardens and put out plants and try and make our homes cozy, and that's why we paint walls, and that's originally why people used to dress up on planes, is because it was considerate of everyone else, like when you're traveling, to have something nice to look at that wasn't in their pajamas, like like all of these. It used to be basic common sense that aesthetics mattered more, even if people didn't make the connection that they mattered to God, but they actually do. And we're not even talking about the health benefits yet, of like actually having some muscle mass, but it just having some muscle mass like actually preserves, I think, an aesthetic that is more pleasing to God. And he made that body spiritual attractiveness connection to all work together.
Yeah. And like, there's a reason why the eye is drawn to beauty. Like God has created us to be drawn to beauty, and nobody questions that a beautiful woman is beautiful. Nobody questions that a handsome man is handsome, that a flower is beautiful, that a tree can be beautiful, that nature has its beauties. And man is part of the nature that God's created. And, in being beautiful and attractive, I think that is exhibiting the sort of positive in God's creation. And if you read like Song of Solomon, Proverbs, poetry over and over emphasizes in a very positive sense the beauty of the human form and attractiveness. And it's all, obviously there's all the references to character and things like that as being attractive. But one thing about training is it's an external manifestation of an inward reality. Haha, there you go, Baptist.
Check.
But it's the same type of thing that like you can't be undisciplined and sloppy. And aesthetically pleasing or fit. Like, it requires a degree of discipline and consistency that what's cool about it is it does show externally. And that's why when they've done studies on people that are more fit, that have more muscle mass and things like that, they do generally command more respect and more authority and more trust, because that you're looking at someone who has these characteristics that are manifest on the outside, and you can't cheat them. You can't have a bunch of, you can't be fit, particularly fit, especially without having those characteristics. There's not like a pill you can take. Maybe someday we'll have one, but there's not like a pill or a shot you can take or anything like that will make you fit. It requires the stimulus and the discipline of training, of eating right, and all those types of things.
Yeah. Just for like a super practical example, like this is so a long time ago, before we even trained or anything like that, but just because aesthetics matter, right? Like not looking sloppy matters. Like your perception is going out to people in a way that you actually can control by the way that you look. And like, anyway, when I used to go out all by myself with like a bunch of little kids, I intentionally would try and look put together. That doesn't mean I had like a church outfit on or something like that, but I had a clean sweater, jeans without stains. I made sure my hair and my makeup was at least like presentable. I wasn't going out in sweatpants and messy buns, because I noticed that when I went out with all my little kids, I got so many more good comments about our family, because I think I looked in control. I looked calm. I looked like we had the kids like, we always tried to make sure they behaved in the stores.
And I think that's part of your witness too.
Yeah, exactly. It was part of my witness going out with them to say like, this is a happy family. We are not out of control. We are not, in the dumps. We're like, and obviously it's not like we all had perfect attitudes. I had to do my share of discipline when we were out with the kids, all that sort of stuff. But but I got so many comments when I looked put together, when the kids looked put together, of like, what a wonderful, beautiful family. And that gives you a toe into like, it's such a wonderful family. It's such a blessing. I'm so thankful God gave me these kids. And then, the conversation conversation opens up and you've all of a sudden got this great opportunity to chat with a stranger.
Yeah.
And so like, if I went out in sweats and messy buns, which I did a couple times, like when my kids were really little, a lot of the time I'd get negative comments about my kids, even if they were being good. Like people were just like, oh, look at those like tired mom and grumpy kids sort of stuff. It's just because it conveys sloppiness.
Or grumpy mom, tired kids.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Or both. Yeah. And that stands out more now as our society becomes more and more obese.
Yeah.
And I think another note on the aesthetic part of it too, before I think we can transition into the health benefits and other benefits. When you are obese, when you are overweight, you are participating in androgyny. The more body fat a man carries, the more body fat a woman carries, the less gender specific you look.
Yeah.
And
that's a good point.
Obviously that is a huge problem in our culture and society. It is rebellion against the nature that God's created us with and God's created order. And in doing so, obviously there's all the discipline and issues and things like that. But besides all that, you are presenting yourself as more androgynous besides being less disciplined, etc. And there's a reason why Paul in Philippians, I've mentioned this many times, when he lists a series of sins specific to certain evil persons, one of his big condemnations against these people is that he mentions their God is their belly. Mm-hmm. And that means that it's idolatry, and they're participating in idolatry by overeating, by over-consuming. At least the Romans, had the decency to like make themselves puke, I guess, so that they didn't get fat. But that's what they were doing. They were overeating, and it's not like people are usually doing this because they're at parties and things like that. That's not where they're overeating. They're overeating in their home day to day. But it's a similar type of idolatry that can creep in and be very insidious. And this is preached about in other areas. This is acknowledged in other areas of our lives, but rarely acknowledged as it pertains to just being disciplined about what you eat and not overeating.
Yeah.
So I think let's move to the health benefits side of things. So there are numerous studies on the topic, obviously, and you can read them. I'm not going to cite them here specifically, but we'll start with, I think, the mental and move to the like really physical, which is kind of easier to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mentally, like we know that if you exercise regularly, and by the way, that exercise can take many forms. These studies have not been super specific to weights or running or anything like that, even though we have our prescription on what we advise people do on for those things. Anyone who just exercises regularly on some level, the portion of the brain responsible for discipline, it's located just above the brainstem in the middle of the brain. I forget what it's called right now. Mm-hmm. It gets bigger. It can be like 2 or 3 times or more bigger compared to someone who doesn't train and doesn't exercise discipline. And this will carry over to other parts of your life.
Yeah.
My name is Justin Johnson with High Calling Fitness. Maybe you're tired, gaining weight, waking up with joint pain, back pain, and a body that just doesn't feel like it used to. You've tried to fix it, but nothing seems to last. What if you don't need another app or crash diet, but a real coach, someone to meet you where you're at and walk with you step by step? At High Calling Fitness, our coaching comes to you wherever you are. No matter where you live, small town or city, across the country or across the world, your health still matters. You don't have to go it alone. We build personalized plans based on your goals, your schedule, and your equipment, even if it's just a set of dumbbells in a small space. This isn't just training, it's a personal partnership. You'll get weekly updates, one-on-one access to your coach, and ongoing support through Zoom and Slack every step of the way. We're here to help you build strength, restore energy, and claim the life you were meant to live. Book a free consult today. Let's talk about your goals and see how we can build something better together. together. High Calling Fitness, built for the everyday, ready for the extraordinary. If you're disciplined in this area, it becomes easier to become disciplined in other areas. Partly because in order to do so, you have to sort of take a bunch of things under control. And then there's a sort of spillover effect anyway. But like actually the portion of your brain responsible for deciding if you should or shouldn't do something gets bigger.
Yeah.
Just like the muscles do. So like bear that in mind. You do this, you consistent in this, it actually becomes easier to be disciplined about other habits that you should have in your life and other disciplines you should be exercising in your life. So that's like numero uno for this discussion on the physical benefits. But beyond that, when you lift weights, a bunch of things change in your body.
Yeah.
And a big one that's very pertinent to Americans is metabolic health.
Yeah.
Yep. How much insulin resistance you have is very determinative of how long you're going to live, what your quality of life is, how risky heart disease is for you, how risky dementia is for you, cancer, all the things that kill Americans at scale are pretty much downstream of metabolic health.
Yep.
In fact, even to reference bodybuilding, I've heard a number of coaches say, because there's obviously people that are more genetically predisposed to be better bodybuilders than others and cultivate more muscle mass. And there are a lot of factors behind that. But the chief factor that I've heard cited numerous times by coaches at really high levels is actually insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
That the best bodybuilders, the thing that they have over the other bodybuilders is their level of insulin sensitivity.
Right.
Like that's actually how important it is in all realms.
And some of the best strongmen as well, right?
Probably. Yeah. I would say probably, but I don't know. Strongmen and powerlifters. I mean,
I know that's Nathan Payton's theory, but
yeah, Nathan Payton, for those of you that don't know, he is one of the top nutritionists in the strongman world, in the powerlifting world, and he also has a ton of bodybuilding clients too. And he's coached at the top levels there. His whole nutritional strategy is about periodization and undulating. I think that's right.
Yeah, that's
undulating.
Right.
Basically, he will go walk people through actually like cyclical times of manipulating insulin sensitivity so that it actually peaks just like you peak for strength or peak for a bodybuilding show at the time of competition so that you can overload carbs and get the results that you want.
Yeah.
Works pretty well. I do think he's particularly effective for clients that have those sort of competitive drive at a high level, that are very gifted, but their weakness is they struggle with insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
I think that's where he really shines. Cause I've talked to people that have been clients of his and their results were okay. But it wasn't anything super stellar, but other people like have had massive transformations with him. And I think that's part of why. So there's all of that. You're going to live longer. Your brain's going to be sharper because it can handle energy better. You're going to be more able to handle carbs and protein and everything else. And they'll go where it needs to go. If you don't have insulin sensitivity, by the way, if it's not where it should be, it's going to skew the nutrients that you eat toward fat storage.
Right.
Like plain and simple. Your insulin will not do what it's supposed to do. It will not drive the nutrients that you're consuming, the macros you're consuming, specifically protein and carbs, into your muscle mass like it should, into other target tissues.
Yep.
It will lead toward more fat storage.
Right.
That's just a given.
Yeah.
And so like nutrient partitioning is a concept of the nutrients you take in, where do they go? And if you are insensitive to insulin, then the nutrients you take in will bias toward the wrong places. It'll be skewed in a way that you don't want, obviously. Other huge benefits are that your joints are going to do better. Training, there's been this old school concept that's mostly died away in our circles, but I think it's still out there in society, that like your body sort of wears out, and it kind of does, but not really. Your body responds to stimulus. Your body is not a machine. It's not a motor that like or a car that, like, when it comes off the line, that's the best it can ever be because it's at its peak and it sort of wears out from there. Our bodies don't work that way because they adapt to stimulus, to reasonable and, amounts of stimulus, of course. But we know that your joints will hold more fluid when you're training. We know that so the cartilage that's between your joints will have more lubrication. We know that all the tissues in your body basically thicken when you train. All of your ligaments, all of your connective tissues, all of your tendons, and of course your muscle mass as well. But those supportive structures thicken and become more robust so that you are less likely to be injured. And by the way, most injuries that we deal with for our clients, and I've dealt with for myself, happen out of the gym.
Yep.
The gym is like this sort of very controlled environment where we can like know what we're doing, we can control what we're doing, and we can be reasonable about the whole thing. And it's this sort of like, it's in a bubble. The injuries happen when you're like doing other stuff,
right?
And it has nothing to do with the gym. It's just that if you are someone that happens to be training, you probably got injured less significantly. And what's really cool about someone who trains, if you get an injury out of the gym, typically because of how strong you are in day-to-day life, those injuries don't impact you very much because you're so resilient. So you become less injured, but also like if I see a 50% reduction in my effective strength output due to injury, like say in my legs or a leg or something like that, okay, well, I don't need to squat 600 pounds in my day-to-day life. I can work around that and I can still do all the things I need to do, maybe with a little bit of pain here and there, but typically it's not going to affect me in everyday life.
Yeah.
But if you're like a typical adult American that's at least slightly obese or morbidly obese, and you struggle going up and down stairs, a 50% degradation in performance in one of your legs is like you're crippled until that heals, basically. You can't get around. And that is a lot more significant and impactful to you. And of course, if you have lower insulin sensitivity, your ability to heal from all injuries is way reduced.
Yep.
Like way, way reduced. The clients that I work with that have low insulin sensitivity, they just don't recover as well from any type of injury or that have any, including by the way, your immune system is affected by your insulin sensitivity as well. People who are diabetic have less effective immune system, specifically type 2 diabetes. Their immune system is less effective. They're not able to stave off certain types of illnesses as well. They don't recover as well from those illnesses. And if you talk to any surgeons, they will tell you that if someone's type 2 diabetic, if they're insulin resistant, they will not recover from surgery nearly as effectively as someone with a good amount of insulin sensitivity. It's actually a very strong predictor of how well and how quickly they will recover from something like surgery or any type of traumatic injury to the tissues or bones. The other thing that's super helpful, especially to women, is your bone mineral density will go up.
Yeah.
Guess what? Taking a calcium pill every day will probably just give you cramps. It will very, very likely not do anything for your bone mineral density unless you are eating a terrible diet that just does not have calcium. You can't make that much bone anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much, and a normal healthy diet gets all the calcium that you need, and among other nutrients. And by the way, your bones aren't like just calcium. So like calcium is actually just a relatively small part of what bones are actually made out of. They're actually kind of a ligament with calcium. It's actually more similar, I believe, to almost like a hardened ligament that also has a structure of calcium crystals in it that provide the rigidity. But it's not like just a hunk of calcium. It's actually a very complex, it's more like a tissue.
Yeah.
You don't think of it as a tissue, but it is a tissue. It's not this hunk of mineral.
Right.
So you've got osteoporosis, arthritis help. And by the way, some people will think like, I can't train because I have a torn meniscus, or I have, or some people have basically no meniscus. It's bone on bone. You actually can train around that. I have had work with people, and I've talked to other coaches that work with people that have basically no more cartilage left in a knee or both knees. They can still squat. You have to progress carefully, but you can still do it. And it's just going to be the programming and the loading is going to look a little bit different. But people who actually train under those circumstances often experience far less joint pain
Right.
in their day-to-day lives than people who don't.
Yep.
It's very, very effective and been proven many times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. There's also been some studies that came out recently, and this is related to the metabolic health because it's dementia related. And we know that dementia is sometimes called diabetes of the brain or type 3 diabetes, those sorts of things, which is still being researched. But anyway, there have been several studies that have come out the last year that say women who train and stay active, and they're saying in midlife, so I'd say like age 30 to 50, have a decreased dementia risk by up to 90%, which is insane to me. It's insane to me that if you train and stay active through midlife, like you can actually decrease your risk for that by up to 90%.
Yeah. It used to be supposed to be this like purely genetic thing. Obviously, there probably are genetic predispositions to it, but ultimately it is metabolic disease of the brain. Right. Your brain is not taking in the nutrients that it needs to take in to function the way it needs to function. And by the way, your brain runs on carbs. It's structurally made out of fats and runs exclusively on carbs. It does not metabolize fats to any significant degree whatsoever. And that's why if like carnivore people and people that are like seeking ketosis all the time, like that's why your liver makes ketones. It makes ketones so your brain doesn't die. Right. That's sort of like an emergency backup system that like you shouldn't be like seeking to tap into all the time. That's why we don't recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was, which you talked about the mental already a little bit, but strength training and having more muscle mass has proven to be more effective than SSRIs as far as treating depression, anxiety.
All classes of antidepressants.
Yes, all classes of antidepressants or anxiety medication.
And all classes and diet and training has been demonstrated to be more effective at treating type 2 diabetes than all classes of medication as well.
Yes. Right. So I don't know why doctors aren't on board yet. I'm really hoping that they do in the next several years, but it's shocking. It's
there's not as much money in it.
Oh, I know exactly. Right. If they get a little kickback for every barbell they sell, that way we would have more people training.
Yeah, but you don't have to buy a barbell every week for life.
Right. I
know. And what training and a good diet is doing is addressing the root cause of these diseases. All medications for depression and type 2 diabetes are treating symptoms.
Yes.
They do nothing to reverse. They do nothing to deal with root cause. They are there to treat symptoms and symptoms alone.
Right.
But the antidepressant capabilities and metabolic, disease defense, if you will, of training and eating a decent diet far outstrips any drugs that have ever been invented and probably ever will be invented.
Right.
They like your hunger signaling can even go down when you're training, because if your hunger signaling, if you're insulin resistant, tends to be very high because you have high levels of insulin. Even when you're fasted, you still have insulin circulating and it's basically doing nothing. That's what it took to like even handle the nutrients that you took in at your last meal. Insulin equals hunger signaling.
Right.
It always leads to hunger signaling. And because of that, you're just going to be more hungry all the time. It's going to be harder for you to be satisfied. It's going to be harder. It's going to take longer for the satiation effect of food to set in because of that insulin resistance.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess when you mentioned symptom resolution, the other thing I just thought of was, help hormone health. And I thought of that because of birth control. And how many women get stuck on birth control because of symptoms that can usually be solved through diet and putting on some muscle mass. And muscle mass, I think just muscle mass alone, especially for all these teenage girls that get put on birth control, would be an incredible help for them.
Yeah. Yeah. That, and your hormonal health will just get better with being healthier. Obviously that's established, but specifically as it pertains to metabolic disease. In men, you will not produce nearly as much testosterone if your insulin sensitivity is low. You just won't. That's like kind of a given. And it's been well observed that like low testosterone often correlates with men that have type 2 diabetes. That's why they often have fertility issues and things like that. It's a very, very strong correlation. And if you're insulin resistant as a man, but even like not overweight, your testosterone production will be lower.
Yeah.
And in women, that's where we see runaway estrogen and or PCOS. PCOS, so women's hormones, what stimulates higher levels of different hormones in women is very different from men. Men, it's like anything you do that makes you unhealthy reduces testosterone. With women, it can go a couple different ways. But PCOS comes from having high insulin levels in women. It'd be like almost nice in a way if that's the way it worked with men, but it's the total opposite with men.
Yeah.
Women that have PCOS have high testosterone because they have high insulin. That high insulin, again, is because that takes a lot to do the same job. And there's a lot of insulin in circulation even after a meal. That chronic insulin signaling will make the ovaries produce a lot more testosterone. And that's why you have virilization effects. Women that have PCOS will eventually often grow facial hair. Their voices will get lower and things like that. They won't feel as good generally. And they'll also generally have really high estrogen levels that go along with this because of damage to the gut microbiome and being bloated and having slow digestion and things like that. These often all go hand in hand. If you have poor digestion, you often also have poor insulin sensitivity, and the two contribute to one another as well.
Yeah, it's a bummer to be a woman sometimes. Everything's so interconnected. It's really hard to have just one thing truly going wrong. And the answer most of the time is just to get healthier because it helps all of the things.
Yeah, it does. And that's why, like, I think to some people that maybe I guess view it from the outside, they think it's all about this sort of like vanity thing and stuff like that. But the honest truth is you feel better, you do better, you're more able to thrive and handle your responsibilities and to pursue the things that you need to pursue in life, become far more capable when you carry greater amounts of muscle mass. And it's not just because of the mental training benefits. It's because your brain changes. It's because your biology changes. It's because your hormones are where they should be. It's because you don't get sick as often. It's because you experience pain in day-to-day life less often. It's because you have more mental clarity. It's because you have more drive in general that spills over to other areas. And you're not in this state of disease where you're sort of just trying to exist and live, which is where I think a lot of Americans find themselves. Because they're kind of trying to get by because you don't feel good most of the time. You're often hungry and tired and things like that.
Right. And I know there's some resistance to it because people didn't used to have to do this, right? Like in the 1900s, early 1900s, people were not having to train with barbells for health. They were just learning about them for fun and for, to see how far they could take their physiques and in circuses and things like that. But they lived a different life than we live now. That's not where we are. And we have to just accept the time.
Well, they didn't have access to all the food.
Exactly.
They didn't have processed foods. In fact, most people were probably somewhat malnourished. We don't struggle with getting food for the most part in America. It's extremely rare, and we don't struggle with having to. In fact, if you're someone that lives in poverty, you're more likely to be obese. It's really the quality of the foods and the food choices and how much and all those types of things that are more at play here. And people, 100 years ago, they were getting more sunlight. They were generally more active. You didn't have nearly as many office and desk jobs. There were certain health concerns that were unique to the day, of course, but this wasn't really one of them. That's why, you didn't have obese people because most people couldn't get a hold of that much food.
Right.
And now that we have this excess of food in America, and I'd say an excess of calories and specifically processed foods that are highly satiating and super calorie dense, now we have to sort of have the opposite where we're not trying to seek out getting enough food. We're actually having to back off and go, okay, I need to actually have restraint here and not participate in eating too much food, which is just really easy. And it's not expensive to eat enough to be overweight. It's not very hard. It's not very difficult. And for a lot of people, it's what they may gravitate to cope with stress and other things like that.
That's so big. Yeah.
Yeah. And along those lines too, all these disease states we talked about that are prevented from cultivating muscle mass, your ability to handle stress also goes up.
True.
You just become more resilient as a human being.
Yeah.
These things things happening in life will affect you less. Doesn't make you invincible to difficulties that are happening or anything like that. But what it does do is it makes you more capable and resilient so that you continue doing the things you need to function without feeling like you need a coping mechanism like certain types of foods or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that what you just said is very, very key. It's like when you do experience stress because you've had the discipline of training over years and years, you can still feel it, but you have the discipline to keep doing what you're doing, which is really, really important, both for getting over stress and just for keeping your life moving and being faithful in the time that God has given you.
Yeah, things are less likely to fall apart under stress because you have the systems in place to continue to function, do the things that you need to do because of how much of your life sort of gets reoriented and all the systems in your life that are there to support you. If you don't have them, then when stress comes in, the chaos that is already your life multiplies and coping becomes very challenging.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that pretty much does it. This will be a shorter episode, I think. But I hope it helps some people understand, why we do what we do. And, for those of you that are already doing this, then it's hopefully reinforcement, encouragement that like this works. And the longer you train, honestly, the better it gets. The benefits of training for 6 months are profound, but the benefits of training for 6 years are far more profound, let alone decades and things like that. I find it far more admirable to see the like 50, 60, 70-year-old man who's been like training for decades and is still getting after it, still doing it than I do. And he might not be that strong anymore, like not even particularly strong. He's just fairly fit or whatever, compared to like the 22-year-old that's got a 700-pound deadlift. Like, where's he going to be in 10 years? Is he still going to be training? Is he still going to be doing what he should be doing? That consistency over time, I find to be far more admirable than a sort of like momentary obsession with getting somewhere, which is cool and great. But I find it really cool to see like a 70-year-old man with a 400-pound deadlift or, 300 pounds or something like that. I find that far more impressive, I guess, than like a 20-year-old who's got a 700-pound deadlift.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree.
Yeah, cool. If the principles, kind of seem simple, but implementing them can be a challenge. So if you're someone that is listening to this and you're interested in pursuing this and trying to figure out how to put the pieces together, that's what we do. So reach out to us, message any of the Instagram or Facebook pages, or we'd love for you to book a meeting with us at highcallingfitness.com and talk with one of the coaches. Stuff is deeply important to all of us, and we love to see people thrive. So feel free to reach out to us. And until then,
Gains and grace.
Gains and grace.
I thought you were going to.